All right. So my name's Adam Funderburg and I run High Caliber Coaching. I was asked after making the last video if I could actually do a run through and demonstrate the 12 skills in 12 months process. So that's kind of what I'm doing. The idea behind this all actually flows from the idea that that you can't actually develop 12 skills by the end of today. You can't do that by the end of the week. You can't do that by the end of the month. You'll be running in 12 different directions all at one time. You'll get no depth of skill at all. So let's reset and let's say what's reasonable to do over a certain time period. I think that it's reasonable to pick up one skill this month if I apply myself. Now, if I said I need to develop one skill at the end of this week, I'm probably going to be a little bit frenetic, a little bit stressed out, and not in the best mindset and frame for being able to develop that skill. I actually go into a lot of depth in the previous video on the reasons why this system works so well. So that said, let's put together a list of 12 skills that we want to do for the whole month. At the end of a stretch, you're going to have the ability to do stuff that you only dreamed of being able to do previously. So rather than picking up random books and having fragmented learning, we're going to be focused on a better path. So let's take a look and see what our priorities are. My priorities, the top 6 that I put out there for myself to do this exercise with, because it's that time where I should be putting together my next year, is God, my wife, my business, my physical health, my parenting and grandparenting. Let me explain that one real quick, though, why it's so far down. My kids have moved out and have kids of their own. My relationship with them is awesome, but I'd like to get some things dialed in, especially on the grandparenting front, since I actually have no memories at all of any real encounters or interactions with any of my grandparents, with the exception of maybe my dad's mother. And I don't want that to be the heritage that's passed down. I want to be more intentional about being a great grandparent. And then money and stewardship. So these are the things that I wanted to do. I decided that I was going to add weight to each one of the categories. So I decided that I'm going to do 3 months on spiritual growth, 2 months on marriage, 3 months on business, 2 months on health, 1 month on parenting, 2 months on money. Okay. So with that, it's going to allow me to be very, very intentional in how I do this. So after I put this list together, this is one area that I think AI excels at. It's helping us to brainstorm ideas. I do not like to sub out my thinking. I don't like doing that. Is not what I'm doing. I am using it as an idea generation tool. By the way, pro tip, if you are using it to help you do different things, especially like brainstorming and doing stuff from just creating thumbnail designs or coming up with titles for your videos and that sort of stuff, make sure that you tell it to explain why it gave you that answer, so that it's not just shoveling food into your mouth. It's actually explaining to you why it did what it's doing, and that will help you to grow as you're learning with the help of an AI. Okay. Let's see. So what I did was I said, hey, these are the 6 categories of my life. I'd like 20 ideas for each category, 20 ideas for study. And what I got was 6 columns with 20 each, and that equals out to 120 pieces. It may not be obvious on the surface, but there's a bit of a pattern. Stuff like the word communication shows up in several different columns. Stewardship showed up in several different columns. And there were different ideas and words that showed up in several different columns. So what I did was I first take a look at the columns just blank as is. And I go through and I highlight ones that I think are interesting or that could be something that I want to study. Then I go through and I actually had the AI go through and say, hey, tell me where there's all of this overlap from my 6 categories, because I don't want to, what I want to do is I want to study like communication. Communication is going to have a whole lot of benefit to me in business, in my marriage, in my relationship with employees, with just a whole ton of things, my children, my grandchildren, and on and on. Okay. So all of that said, look for the crossover. So I pulled these into a single list that became the foundation for my 12 skills. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to look at how I learn best. So the different kinds of inputs that I like are going to be podcasts, classes, videos, paper books, digital books, audiobooks, conferences, and coaching. I have books put into 3 different categories because I actually don't learn very well with paper books. I find that reading digital books is different than paper books. There's a lot of commonalities, but I find them a different experience. And then audiobooks can be plus or minus depending on the topic and that sort of thing. Then what I'll do is I will take my list of topics: communication, time management, leadership, mindset, budgeting, stewardship, prayer, worship, health, and marriage. These are the 12 that I decided to do. Now, the health one, I decided that I was going to split this, which honestly, unless you need to, unless it's really important that you do, don't do that. I split this one into cooking and working out because I can't actually get it into my head that I could spend a whole month learning about cooking healthily. I couldn't spend a whole month about learning how to work out. But I feel like I could get a lot of depth if I spent 2 good weeks on cooking and 2 good weeks on working out. And if I did them all in the same month, I should be able to get some benefit because I'm just thinking health. When I looked at my list, I said, hey, I need to get an idea of which topics I should be doing first. Is there anything that looks like it should be put in a specific order? So I just went through and I put them all in an order that seemed pretty good to me. I decided to start out with mindset because for the most part, the way that we approach stuff is going to be super helpful. Then I went with marriage, then prayer, then health, and so on. And if I didn't say it earlier, this is not like some kind of soul math where there's an absolute right answer. Some of this stuff is going to be intuitive. I think that, some things would complicate things if they were out of order. Like if you wanted to learn how to do marketing before you learned how to do sales, I think that that's a problem. Because if you get successful with your marketing like straight out of the gate, then you've got a whole bunch of people calling and showing up and you don't know how to sell to them. I think that you're best if you back it up and you say, hey, I'm going to learn how to sell, and then I'm going to learn how to drive traffic to myself. So there's, look for any conflict like that learning these things out of order would be beneficial or a hindrance. For me, that's why I picked mindset first, was because I just wanted to roll into the year with a thinking about my thinking and thinking about, how to learn, how to approach my life. Okay. So I decided that what I was going to do because of this topic, that it would probably be best if I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to demonstrate how I'm going to lay out marriage. I think that marriage is probably the one out of all of them that I could look at and I would wind up giving you the most benefit. Okay, so podcasts, classes, videos, courses, conferences, books, coaching, that could be like marriage counseling, that sort of thing. And by the way, marriage counseling isn't something that you need to go to only if your household's completely detonated. You know, you don't take your car to the shop only when it's smoking. You know, sometimes you take your car to the shop because it needs maintenance. Maintenance work would make it so that it just runs better. And then you stay out of the emergency type part of going to the shop. Okay, so I broke out my my list: podcast, classes, videos, courses, conferences, books, coaches. We are shooting for depth, not speed. So here's another pro tip for you. When you're reading a book, don't skip the questions in the back. I want you to answer those questions. I want you to use a notepad if you hate writing in a book, but I want you to read those questions, because when I am not really like in process and I'm just blasting through stuff, I tend to read. I'll like glance at the question, say, yeah, I know. And then I go, I shouldn't have done that. I should have read through it and answered the questions. I would have got more out of it. Another pro tip is that when you read a really great book, if you want to get more out of that particular book, then go watch the podcasts where the author is promoting things, because he'll reword things. You'll wind up with the host asking them questions that will help you clarify ideas, and you'll find that it fills in a lot of gaps. And it also clarifies things that maybe you thought you understood, but then it turns out that you actually misread the synonym. You thought it meant one way, but it turned out to be another way. This is also a situation where, you know, if it involves other people, like business or marriage or whatever, you know, with my office manager, her and I went through a book on the relationship between the assistant and the owner, and that was super helpful. We developed a common language, and we're able to have something that we look back to and reference. With my wife, you know, we've tried reading books together. Limited success. We've had much, much better success with going to conferences and with doing stuff like sitting down and watching a video together and talking about it. So figure out who needs to be involved and what the best way is for you guys to all, you know, learn how to do it. Another quick pro tip, okay? If you pick up a book and you get, you know, 20% of the way through and you're like, this book sucks, just throw the book out. Okay, you don't need to finish it. Go buy a different book, move on to the next thing, whatever. How often have we watched a movie, we got 20% of the way through, and then we were like, this movie just sucks. It doesn't get turned around. It doesn't stop sucking. Okay, so value your time over the few bucks that you spent on a book or a course or whatever, and just stop. If you pull into a cul-de-sac, just leave the cul-de-sac. Quitting is okay in a lot of circumstances. Now, this is how I'm setting up 2026. 12 months, 12 deep skills, 12 areas to grow. I want to develop a better spiritual life, marriage, business, health, relationships with my kids and grandkids, better stewardship, and a better life because it was intentional. If you want to set up a 90-minute call with me, we can go through, we'll do basically a strategy call and assessment of your life. You're going to get some wins straight out of the gate. It's going to be super helpful. And that is it. I'm Adam Funderburg, the owner of High Caliber Coaching, and I will catch you later, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.